Washington Times front page for Thursday, April 27th, 2023. Thanks for joining us. I'm George Gerbo. President Biden and South Korean President Yoon Yeol unveiled at the White House a new agreement designed to deter North Korea from launching a nuclear attack, including the deployment of a U.S. nuclear-armed submarine. Jeff Murdoch and Tom Howell report the arrangement, dubbed the Washington Declaration, was the centerpiece of Yoon's visit to Washington as President Biden hosted him for a bilateral meeting, joint press conference, and state dinner at the White House. The agreement will enable the U.S. and South Korea to better coordinate a strategy if North Korea attacks the South, but also keeps nuclear weapons under U.S. control. Biden emphasized the U.S. will not be stationing nuclear weapons on the peninsula. North Korea has become increasingly aggressive in testing nuclear missiles in recent years and has shown little interest in diplomacy about reducing its nuclear stockpile. Pentagon officials confirmed this week that a recent operation by the Taliban killed an Islamic State leader believed to be responsible for the August 2021 suicide bombing that killed 13 U.S. Marines at the Kabul airport. Ben Wolfgang reports this week's revelations signal the interests of the U.S. and Afghanistan are closely aligned in some instances. The Taliban see the Islamic State Khorasan, a particularly active and violent branch of the ISIS terrorist group, as perhaps the greatest threat to their survival. Specialists say the Taliban have been hunting down ISIS-K figures with ruthless aggression and in some cases executing them in brutal fashion. The Taliban are far the model U.S. counterterrorism partners, but analysts say it's a reality American officials may have to accept. Senate Republicans are criticizing a Biden administration rule that will force homebuyers with good credit scores to pay higher mortgage rates and fees to subsidize people with riskier credit ratings who are also shopping the housing market. Tom Howell and Ramsey Touchberry report Kansas Republican Senator Roger Marshall sent a letter to the Federal Housing Finance Agency demanding details on how the policy will be implemented. He said the rule will invert the common-sense risk financing structure at government-sponsored entities and mortgage giants Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. The rule is set to take effect on May 1st. You can read all of these stories at WashingtonTimes.com/front page. You can also find the entire lineup of Washington Times podcasts at WashingtonTimes.com/podcasts. With Congress and the White House butting heads on border security, a group of conservatives is pushing for Texas to break the deadlock by creating a first-ever state border patrol. Stephen Dinan reports the Texas legislature is debating House Bill 20, which would allow the state to create a border protection force deputized to repel illegal border crossers. It would also authorize the construction of a border wall and elevate the crime of trespassing while jumping the border to a third-degree felony. Underlying the legislation is a debate over whether the country is facing an invasion as envisioned in the U.S. Constitution. Article 1, Section 10 of the Constitution prohibits states from raising troops unless actively invaded or in such imminent danger as will not admit of delay. American Federation of Teachers President Randi Weingarten said educators were terrified during the COVID-19 pandemic, but she rejected claims that she strong-armed government officials to keep schools closed longer than necessary. Tom Howell reports Weingarten made the comments in front of the House Select Subcommittee on the coronavirus. Republicans on that panel said the AFT had a direct line to CDC Director Rochelle Walensky, raising questions about process and political influence. They said the resulting guidance seemed to reflect the union's demands for flexibility if a new variant appeared and a remote work option for teachers at high risk of illness. And finally, companies say they've raised prices in this inflation era to keep up with soaring production costs, but research shows most consumers believe prices have been hiked more than necessary. Sean Salai reports a growing alliance of shoppers, market-limiting conservatives, and some liberals say the trend, dubbed greedflation, explains why companies are making record profits while presenting themselves as beleaguered. In a survey of 2,000 shoppers by consumer researcher Attest released this week, 80% said brands have cited inflation as an excuse to raise prices. Another 58% said more needs to be done to protect consumers and stop companies from using such practices. Find all of today's front page stories at WashingtonTimes.com/front page or on the Washington Times app, and find us wherever you get your podcasts. Just search Washington Times in any major podcast app. You can also find us on Twitter and Instagram at Wash Times for breaking news, sports, commentary, and more. For Washington Times, I'm George Gerbo.